Hi everyone, I'm Philo, and I'm going to be talking about phone phreaking. Come on. Okay, so Philo, I'm the obsolete Ritsak, scholar of weird ancient technical lore, and your friendly local telephone witch. So, before we can talk about phreaking, we need to talk about the Bell system, which was from 1877 until 1982. It was the largest telephone company in the United States.
Meet the audio.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. They were the largest telephone company in the United States, dominating telecommunications in most of the United States and Canada, with a few areas as exceptions, like, for instance, Rochester had Rochester Telephone and Telegraph, which is now Frontier. They haven't maintained the line since they changed names. Yeah, so, and in the 1960s, they were at the peak of their power. If they called the FBI listened to them. This will become important in a couple minutes. So a part of the Bell system is Bell Labs, which is their scientific division, which is still around. It's been passed around between a bunch of telecommunications companies descended from Bell, sort of like a hot potato. They've invented quite a few things, including the transistor, the CCD, which is the charge-coupled device, which is the sensor in digital cameras, invented the Unix operating system, as well as the C programming language. Those last two may have been in mistakes, but yeah. And because it turns out that if you have massive profits from being in the nation's telephone monopoly, you can just spend it all on doing random physics. The crown jewel of Bell's infrastructure was the long line system. It's a nation-spanning, well, not just continent-spanning network of microwave repeater towers, like this one in Geneseo, and this one in Brooklyn, and between these, it bounces signal to bounce telephone calls to get them across the country. Of course, putting these up and maintaining these was very expensive, so they charged very high rates for long-distance calls. If I remember correctly, I don't have my notes, but if I remember correctly, a call from the West Coast to the East Coast in the mid-1960s cost something like $1.75 for a 3-minute call during off-peak hours. That doesn't sound like much, but the dollar has gone down in value quite a bit since then, and that's about $15 in modern money. And in the 1950s, long distance had come down in price, and automation had improved enough that people were able to make long distance calls directly by dialing rather than calling up the operator and asking them to place the call. That will become important in a bit. So, in every telephone company office, telephone company central office, in every city and town in the country, they have these crossbar switches, which were basically electromechanical computers for processing, for sending phone calls. It's called crossbar because you see these horizontal and vertical bars here. That's part of the switching fabric. It's out of mass amounts of relays and vacuum tubes, and communicates with other parts of Bell's equipment, such as long lines equipment and other crossbar switches, by making various beeps and tones in the phone call, this is a bit of an issue because that's what you're letting people, because you're letting people, because because it's possible to inject your own beeps using a device like this, blue box. Yeah, this one isn't blue, but in fact, most of them weren't blue, but one of the earliest ones that Bell found was. And the name stuck. Works by abusing the way that abusing those in-band signals and how long a line's trunks work. Because to use it, you'd dial a call to a 1-800 number, which is free for you and gets billed to the company that owns the 1-800 number. And then, before they pick up, you hit a button on the blue box to make a 2600 hertz tone. That tone only appears normally only appears in Bell equipment when when the long distance trunk is idle. So the switch on the far end that's assembled, that's connected up your call to the 1-800 line, gets that tone and assumes, okay, they hung up. But your local switch knows that you're still connected because the phone is still off the hook. Okay. And so you make that tone, and then you make it stop making the tone, and the remote switch then knows that then thinks that a new call is started because that's how it's supposed to be. And then you'd send a certain tone to indicate that you were starting to dial a number. Dial the number on the blue box. You can't use an ordinary touch tone system because it's a different set of beeps for mysterious Bell reasons. And then you hit another beep to indicate that you finished dialing, and then the switch on the far end completes your call, but the switch you're connected to thinks that the call is still ringing and hasn't been picked up on the other end, so you don't get charged. By the early 1970s, these were being built by electronics hobbyists, college students, and organized crime. Yes, the mob was involved in phone phreaking. So, of course, Bell was not happy about this. They found out about it in 1962, and they gave Bell Labs an unlimited budget to build equipment to prevent it. So, I started off by building a system called Project Green Star that detected if the tone was improperly on a call, and if it was, recorded it on tape, which Bell employees then listened to, and in some cases informed the FBI of. Mob-linked gamblers mob-linked bookies in Miami, and we were caught at using blue boxes as a result of this system, and their lawyer tried to defend them in court by saying that this is illegal wiretapping, but instead the court decided that illegal use of a communication system can legally be wiretapped, and this is a smaller device that they put on your line if they suspected you of using a blue box. It doesn't record, it just turns these on to be connected to some other sort of data recorder. Blue boxes weren't the only form of phreaking. Quite a bit of early telephone phreaking was just blind teenagers you're just playing around with the phone system because they had nothing better to do. And other freakers just explored the telephone network, found lines that multiple people could call into to just hang out with other freakers. In fact, one line that they found for this turned out to be a Bell corporate conference call line. And then also they got to these places just by dialing sometimes, or by impersonating an operator, or because there were no real checks. You just needed to sound confident and know the right acronyms. Or, of course, there were some people who'd managed to figure out how to whistle at just that right 2600 hertz to make it long distance line drop. However, all things must come to an end. In 1965, Bell started using the #1 electronic switching system, which behaves differently than the crossbar switches and uses a separate private line for communication between switches rather than in-band. And that made most of the interesting phreaking impossible. There's still weird uncharted bits of the phone network you could explore with just a dial, but this put an end to blue boxing. By the 1980s, these were in pretty much every major city's central office, and the days of blue boxing had come to a close. Of course, the subculture of telephone phreakers chased down by the FBI extended into the hacker culture of the 80s, 90s, and to some extent early 2000s. Because it's illicit knowledge, tampering with communication systems belonging to powerful corporations. Yeah. Questions? I'm just waiting for Forrest to have some sort of absolute gigabrain question, because
Okay, I know a lot about phone phreaking, so yeah, I think it needs to make a comeback with LTE and GSM.
yeah, it does.
And that protocol is awful, severely awful, and no one's really messing around with it because it's obfuscated behind radio.
I mean, radios are scary, and so is the FCC.
Have you seen radio antennas? Those things are magic.
So those things, radio antennas literally are just sigils that make the air, that make make shit just vibrate weirdly. It's witchcraft. I'm sorry. It is. Straight up is. Jason.
What got you into phones and systems and stuff?
Okay, for the stream, what got me into phones and phreaking and stuff? That's a good question that I'm honestly not sure. I think I read about it somewhere and then read more about it and then came to with a dozen Wikipedia tabs open and another couple of eBay tabs of weird telephone equipment open, which is a bit ironic given how I don't really call anyone. Send to help, my apartment is full of phones. Yeah?
Do you think that if phones were incorporated into like a competition setting in the future, that like phreaking could be used in a competition setting?
I think you'd have to change your techniques quite a bit, because as we do not have the budget to acquire a crossbar switch, and
Well, you can simulate one.
Yeah, no. But I only know of 2 places that have working crossbar machines, and they both have very dedicated teams of volunteers to keep them working.
But you can simulate one in Asterix.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. Thank you, Forrest.
Yeah, you can simulate it with SIP phones. You can even do the tones over SIP. It works. It's audio. And there's a lot more to exploring phone systems than just futzing about with the signaling.
Yeah.
Also just exploring IVR systems or trying to get into mailboxes or any other services that are in a phone tree. A lot of times if you, it's still used intercorporate, all of those secondary tones for transferring calls. You'd be surprised. You call up AT&T, tech support or something like that, and it cross transfer you, and you hear those tones.
Yes, Jason?
Do you want to make me a Phreaking CTF challenge?
I'll help.
Yes.
I have the phones.
So do I. Most of mine even work.
I have 30 SIP phones across the room.
You have 31.
No.
They're brand new too. We're gonna set them up for December.
Oh, if those come in,
Yeah, they're in the conference room.
cool.
They're real cheap VTECs, but they work.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Philo. Thank you so much for an amazing presentation. You know, I don't hear a lot about Phreaking, and it's very cool that we kind of get these new technology, not new technologies, but different tech. Yes, don't hear a lot about phones. All right, next up we have Jason with a little wellness presentation on physical health.